Someone in the room shifts their tone by about 10%. Nobody else notices. You noticed. And now it's 3 hours later and you're still turning it over, trying to figure out what it meant, what you did, whether you should say something. If this happens to you a lot, you've probably been told you're too sensitive. Or you overthink everything. Here's what almost nobody tells you. There isn't one kind of awareness. There are at least two, and they are almost opposites. One of them is genuinely a strength, the other one is what's been quietly wearing you out. And most people who think they're too aware have never been told which one they're actually doing. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to tell the two apart in real time. And why the same trait that makes a bad day unbearable for you is also the reason a good day hits you harder than it hits almost anyone else. Let's start with the biology, because this isn't just a personality quirk. In the late 1990s, a researcher named Elaine Aron interviewed dozens of adults who described themselves as easily overwhelmed or deeply affected by things other people seem to brush off. What she found was a measurable trait now called sensory processing sensitivity. People high in this trait process incoming information more deeply before acting on it. Researchers describe it as a tendency to pause to check in new situations, rather than reacting immediately. Somewhere around 15 to 20% of people fall clearly into this category. Here's the part that reframes everything. This isn't a malfunction. Biologists studying animal behavior have found similar patterns across dozens of species, from fish to birds to primates. In almost every group, some individuals scan the environment carefully before moving, while others act fast and adjust later. Both strategies survive. A group made entirely of fast-reacting individuals misses subtle threats. A group made entirely of careful scanners moves too slowly to seize opportunities. Nature seems to have decided it's better to have both types around. If you're the person who clocks the tone shift, the facial flicker, the thing that felt slightly off, you're not broken. You're running the scanner role. Something like 15 to 20% of every social group probably always has. But scanning isn't where the exhaustion comes from. The exhaustion comes from what happens after you scan, and that's where the real research gets interesting. Back in 1975, 3 psychologists built something called the self-consciousness scale to measure how much attention people direct inward toward their own thoughts and feelings versus outward toward how they're perceived. For decades, high self-consciousness was treated as one thing. Then later, researchers dug deeper and found it actually splits into 2 distinct patterns. The first is called self-reflectiveness. This is turning inward specifically to evaluate yourself, to figure out what something means about who you are. Studies link this pattern to higher shame, higher guilt, and higher social anxiety. The second is called internal state awareness. This is simply noticing what you're feeling without immediately turning it into a verdict about your worth. This pattern does not carry the same anxiety and shame that the first one does. Same starting material, same moment, 2 completely different directions your mind can take it. One spirals into, what does this say about me? The other just registers, here's what's happening, and stays there. Here's a study coming up that gives you an almost embarrassingly simple way to tell, in the moment, which one you're doing. It's the difference between awareness that helps you and awareness that just keeps replaying on a loop, and once you see the marker, you can't unsee it in yourself. Psychologist Susan Nolen-Hoeksema spent much of her career studying what she called rumination, which is really just the clinical word for overthinking. Her research found that people with a habitual pattern of dwelling on their negative feelings were significantly more likely to develop and stay stuck in depression and anxiety. But later work on her theory, led by researcher Kirsten Treynor, found that rumination itself splits into 2 distinct styles, and only one of them is actually the problem. The first style is called brooding. It's a passive, repetitive comparison between where you are and where you think you should be. Why does this always happen to me? What's wrong with me? It doesn't move anywhere. It just circles. The second is called reflective pondering. It's turning inward on purpose, to actually work through a problem, to understand a cause so you can do something about it. Notice the pattern. It's the exact same split as the self-consciousness research, just showing up again from a completely different angle 25 years later. Self-reflectiveness and brooding both spiral around a verdict about you. Internal state awareness and reflective pondering both just process information and move toward something. 2 separate research traditions, decades apart, kept finding the same fork in the road. So here's the practical test. The next time you catch yourself replaying a moment, ask one question. Is this thought moving toward an answer, or is it just repeating? If you're generating an actual next step, even a small one, that's reflection. And reflection is useful. If the exact same sentence is looping with no new information showing up, that's brooding. And brooding has nothing left to give you. It already told you everything it's going to tell you several loops ago. There's one more piece of this that changes how you should feel about the whole trait, not just how you should manage it. Researchers studying sensitivity, including Aron's later work and related studies by developmental psychologists like Jay Belsky and Bruce Ellis, describe highly sensitive people using a for better and for worse model. The same nervous system that makes a stressful childhood or a toxic workplace hit a sensitive person harder also makes a supportive environment, a good friendship, or a meaningful piece of music land disproportionately deeper. Sensitive people aren't simply more fragile. They're more responsive, full stop, in both directions. Put a highly sensitive person in a rough environment, and the research shows worse outcomes than average. Put that same person in a genuinely good one, and the outcomes are better than average, not just equal to everyone else's. So the trait was never the problem. The direction you point it is what decides everything. If you're someone who notices the tone shift, the pause, the thing underneath what someone said, that's a scanning ability. Quietly valuable, present in maybe 1 in 5 people. What happens next depends entirely on whether that noticing turns into a verdict about yourself that loops forever or an observation you actually use. Same input. 2 roads, only one of them costs you anything. And if you've spent years assuming your depth was a liability, the research suggests you had it backwards. It's not too much awareness. It's awareness that hasn't been given anywhere useful to go yet.